Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the RI.Logistica. The RI.Logistica is the event we are going to bring to you for the next 2 days, and I'm happy to welcome you to this webinar. And the event will be supported by the Horizon 2020 project Brightness that is funded from the European Commission. And we will cover a broad range of topics in the next 2 days. And we haven't come up with that ourselves here at ESS, where my colleague Jürgen and I have been hosting the program committee, and we will be host throughout the day. So maybe to start to introduce myself, I'm Ute Gunzenheimer, the head of external relations and EU projects at the European Spallation Source, and the inventor and the spiritus rector of this conference is my colleague Jürgen. Jürgen.
Yes, thank you, Ute. And indeed, this has been a journey, and what a journey crowned by this event and conference today. I don't want to waste a lot of time, but I'm very proud and happy for all the participants joining and for the moderators that share their time and experience. So a great thank you for all that so far. So good luck, everybody.
Yes, thank you very much, Jürgen. And we were supported in this journey by a number of colleagues from international and national research infrastructures that you can see here on the panel line that have helped us putting this very diverse and hopefully very interesting program together for you. Before I introduce our first speaker to you, I would like to address a few technical questions. So we will have the possibility for you participants to address questions to the speakers, the moderators of the panels, by using the Q&A functionality in the Zoom bottom line, please. You also have the possibility to chat with each other through the chat functionality, but for addressing questions, please use the Q&A functionality. And with that, I think it's time to hand over to our first speaker. That's our Director General, our Acting Director General, Kevin Jones, and we are happy that he has the time to open this conference now. Over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Ute. If I could have the opportunity to share my screen. So thank you very much. Well, good morning, everyone, and I am delighted to be here and make the opening remarks for RI.Logistica. First, please allow me to thank Ute and Jürgen and their team for all the hard work they've put into organizing this workshop. And I hope that it will have some important outcomes that will help all of the research infrastructure elements through Europe and, in fact, the world to improve how we deliver our science in a way that can be done in a more cost-effective and opportunistic way. So I note that we have 220 registrants from 32 nations worldwide. And I think that's a testament to a lot of hard work and organizing capability on the part of the organizing committee. I'd also like to thank all of the presenters and panel participants and moderators for taking the time to help us have what I hope will be a successful conference. So thank you very much. In terms of a couple of quick opening remarks, when I said to myself, what did we learn from the construction of ESS and the delivery and installation of equipment from in-kind contributors? This is essentially a 3 billion euro construction project with in-kind partnerships from 13 member countries, a lot of direct vendors and so on. I think Jürgen will attest that the logistics have been extremely challenging and complex, particularly with receiving equipment, dealing with importation, documentation, the challenges of taxation and VAT and all these different aspects. And there are a significant number of opportunities to learn about how to improve the way we do things. So seeking common standards for shipping, packing, handling of equipment in between RIs and across the research landscape, I think affords opportunities for improvement. Questions of insuring goods coming in from in-kind partners and managing the self-insurance characteristics we've learned a great deal about during the construction of ESS. And also using delivery terms effectively, and sometimes that has proven to be a challenge to us as well. And input from our participants in industry may in fact help us in this regard. Looking at user interfaces without a common ground, every RI has its own platform. I would just remark here in my previous experience at large research facilities in the United States, particularly the X-ray and neutron sources. A lot of effort has been made to try to standardize proposal submission platforms to make things easier for the scientific community to interact with the large research infrastructure entities in the United States. And then benchmarking of transport costs shows that there are opportunities for getting better deals to save the taxpayer money. After all, what we're interested in doing is trying to understand how to improve our processes and procedures, because most of us are taxpayer-funded entities, and it's our fiduciary duty to give the taxpayers the maximum benefit for every euro or dollar or whatever currency they provide to do the scientific work that we engage in. So this conference is an opportunity to look at areas for common standards and interfaces in the logistics and supply chain, to address some of the common challenges we face as research infrastructure entities in a very complex landscape, particularly as we look at the question of handling both samples and users. And I was thinking back in preparation for this to 40 years ago when I was a graduate student, and I had a trip from New Jersey to my facility in Los Alamos, New Mexico, where I was doing my thesis work. And I was asked to detour to Boston to pick up some samples and just carry them with me in my luggage, please. Probably something you wouldn't do today, but nevertheless, an interesting experience at the time. And then it's an opportunity for the research infrastructures to learn from and benchmark against industry. So I pose a few questions here. What could we achieve together over the next day or so?
Kevin, may I interrupt you? We can't see your slides. Could you please, because when we now come to the questions, it would be interesting.
I'm sorry, the presentation.
But it was perfect, the presentation. We didn't miss them, but I think for the questions we want to address, it would be nice to see the slides.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand what you're telling me.
We don't see a presentation. It's
I
not
did start sharing. I did start sharing. My apologies. I thought I was in sharing mode, and
we didn't miss the slides, but now I think, yeah, very good.
My apologies. Something must have happened there that I didn't notice in the presentation mode. My humble apologies for that.
Don't worry. That's perfect.
I will quickly. Do you see them now?
Fantastic. Thanks very much.
I apologize for that. Let me back up just very quickly. So here are the questions, the observations that I posed in the first slide. And just so that you have this available on the recording. And then these are the three opportunities that I chatted about: common standards, addressing the challenges we face with user and sample handling, and learning and benchmarking from industry. And here are the questions as to what we could achieve together. Looking for opportunities to develop and implement standards for logistics and the supply chain, creating a generic interface for the users, and to potentially simplify customs handling, which in a multinational project is an interesting challenge. So I just center back on the point I would make and looking at the road to the future. From my perspective, we are the stewards of the funding from our national funding agencies, and in some cases, international consortia like the ESS-ERIC. And it's our responsibility to be good stewards of those resources and to maximize the benefit to the taxpayers of the different nations. And so looking at opportunities for efficiency, for synergies, for standardized processes and procedures that enable us to get the most out of every currency unit that we receive in terms of delivering scientific research for the benefit of our nations and for mankind, I think is the highest priority. So hopefully we will get some commitment from the leaders of various RIs to support this initiative. We will look for opportunities to engage authorities to simplify our logistics and supply chains and handling processes, and look at the opportunities for moving this forward fairly quickly in a way that we can sustain as we move forward. So with that, I think I'll come to conclusion. My apologies again for the malfunction with the slides, and thank you for letting me know. Apologies for that. I think I'll stop sharing at this point and turn it over to Dominic Sobczak for his introductory remarks.
Yes, thank you very much, Kevin. And Dominic Sobczak, who is the Deputy Head of the Research and Innovation Actors and Research Careers Unit at the European Commission and their DG Research and Innovation, and actually our sponsor of this event, since we're hosting it under a Horizon 2020 project. Dominic, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ute. Thank you very much, Kevin. Good morning, everyone. It's always a pleasure and honor to sponsor something as useful as this conference, so we are delighted to do so. Although probably we haven't known when we were funding the project that the conference will be organized, I think it's a great demonstration of how far we have gone with research infrastructures and the discussion between and among research infrastructures over the last years, that we are actually able to organize that kind of event and share experiences in this quite specialized topic. So my intervention today, and now I will try to share the slides, hopefully that will work. And I will use some of the most famous words that over the last year one could hear. So do you see my slides?
Yes, we do.
Wonderful. Right. So as mentioned, this is the topic of the conference is very much specialized, and I'm not going to pretend that at the European Commission we actually have a lot of expertise with that. So my task today is not to speak about logistics and research infrastructures, but to give you more of a little helicopter view on how we see research infrastructure policy developing in the next years. So the title of my presentation is Research Infrastructures as Drivers for Science and Innovation. I think that you are all convinced, sitting around here, that research infrastructures are indeed drivers for science, innovation. They are the key to our capacities in Europe and worldwide to actually deliver knowledge-based and science-based growth. So I'm not going to make a case in the presentation for research infrastructures or why they are the drivers. What I would like to give you, as I mentioned, is a little bit of an indication of how we at the European Commission would actually like to help the research infrastructures in the coming years to indeed fulfill the potential, existing potential, and to develop the future potential to serve as drivers for growth, to serve as drivers for excellent science and innovation, and to help us in Europe be even better in the science that we are doing. Okay, now, right, changes, wonderful. So I would like to start by a short recap, actually, of the last years, and speak about research infrastructures in the European research area. So as you all, I think, are convinced, what we have done in Europe with research infrastructures over the last 20 years is really a major achievement. And it's one of the major achievements of the European research area that we set out to develop a bit more than 20 years ago. And there are a number of, I think, proofs number of facts that can easily demonstrate how far we have gone over these 20 years. So we have the European Strategy Forum for Research Infrastructures, almost 20 years of joint work on research infrastructure policy development in a very unique setup where we bring together the member states, the associated countries, so the national government, with the Commission and with the scientific community to discuss jointly research infrastructure policy and to discuss jointly also priorities for investments to make our science better and to build up our capacities. One of the main products, as you know, of ESFRI is the ESFRI roadmap, and it's again already 15 years of common strategy for investments in research infrastructures, with 37 joint research infrastructures developed, 18 under preparation, close to 20 billion euro worth of investment mobilized, and this is definitely not trivial. And with the next roadmap 2021 around the corner, where we also expect new ambitious projects to be agreed on for implementation in the coming years. From the side of the Commission, we also did, I think, our fair share of contribution to this, with setting up integrated research infrastructure networks across all fields of science, providing one-stop shop access to national resources and facilities. And that really has transformed completely the landscape of research in Europe in the past decade and a half, where the scientists from no matter where they come can actually access some of the best facilities that are globally available to do their science. We also set up the ERIC, as you know, which is a dedicated legal entity to establish and operate international research infrastructures. And with the latest one, Eli ERIC, established just a couple of weeks ago, we have 22 ERICs already operational, with a few more in the pipeline coming in probably later this year and next year. So this is just a very brief overview to show you how much we have actually achieved really very briefly in the field of research infrastructure. And now the question is, what's next? And some indications for that are given in the Commission communication from last September on the new European research area. In that communication, we recognized the RIs as a key element of success of the era, and that's already quite important. And indeed, recognize it as an important driver for future development of the European research area, of the European economy. We highlighted the need to support investments in state-of-the-art research infrastructure. So we don't want to stay complacent. We don't want to stay at what we have right now. We need to invest further in excellent science and in excellent facilities. We also pay quite a lot of attention to the major impact of research infrastructure on science and innovation overall, and the need to foster this impact further in the coming years. One example of that is related to the hottest topic of the last year, COVID-19, with research infrastructures mobilizing to develop a COVID-19 data platform, but also to provide services for all kinds of research and innovation related to treatment, diagnosis, vaccines, etc. But this is just one example. There are many, many more examples where research infrastructures can, should, and do make a tremendous impact on our everyday life. We also have a dedicated ERA key action, well, number 10, where we speak about the need to implement the ESFRI white paper and establish an updated governance structure for research and technological infrastructures. The phrasing of that is relatively short, but actually, I believe many of you have read the ESFRI white paper. It's a very comprehensive document describing the ambition for research infrastructure policy and for research infrastructure development for the coming years. So referring to it as a need for implementation is, I think, a major indication that we want to have a comprehensive approach to research infrastructure policy in the coming years. So now just very briefly, as many of you are probably interested, as we have published the communication last year, and then we had competitiveness council conclusions from the new era, we are currently working on the what we call the ERA rollout, so implementing that more in practical terms. What we are working right now is, first of all, a pact for research and innovation in Europe, which would include a renewed commitment towards an EU research and innovation system. What we would like to achieve is a stronger type of document that would really stimulate actions at the level of member states. So we are looking at a council recommendation to adopt the pact as a council recommendation that would indeed have be able to translate into very concrete actions in the member states and around the different actors of research and innovation. What we are working on the pact together with the member states within the ERA forum for transition, and also in discussions with the various stakeholders. What we would like to include in the pact is a set of common values and principles, so kind of an agreed baseline, or what are the core issues, what are the core values on which we would like to base our work on research and innovation. We will identify joint priority areas for ERA action, and there is a prominent role foreseen for research infrastructure. So areas where we want to work together in the future more closely, even more closely than we are working together now, as well as governance mechanics for research and innovation. So how we will deliver basically on the priority actions, and how we would ensure the implementation of the values and principles. As I mentioned, is currently, the work on that is currently ongoing. A proposal from the Commission is expected by the end of June or beginning of July, and the adoption of the Council recommendation is foreseen in the second half of this year. What will follow from that is an ERA policy agenda. So we will work based on the agreed priority areas. We will work on concrete ERA actions, and that will be developed further in 2021. Again, in a very collaborative mode with the member states and in consultation with stakeholders, and with a very broad scope of the starting base, looking at very different topics that are related to research and innovation. Research infrastructures among them, but also issues like open science, gender and diversity, careers of researchers, research assessment and reward system, and also higher education transformation. We will want to monitor the implementation of these actions within the ERA scoreboard. Now, for research infrastructures more specifically, what are the key trends that I see, very general trends that are shaping research infrastructure policy under the new ERA? First of all, and that's something that was a major consideration even 20 years ago when we were setting out to develop the European research area, and was one of the main reasons why research infrastructures were actually one of the first areas where we started working together closely, is that RIs are becoming ever larger, more complex and demanding to establish, and also more costly. And I think that the fact that you're meeting today to speak about logistics for construction and operation of RIs is a very good demonstration of the fact that the statement is very true. It is at least as true as it was 20 years ago, and probably more so. At the same time, due to the work that we have done that I mentioned over the last 20 years, the landscape of European research infrastructures is maturing. It's actually much more mature than it was, with a growing number of common facilities becoming operational, a lot of facilities and instruments also at national and regional level that were very often funded with the European structural funds, that are also available for our scientists. And these infrastructures provide services already for European science and innovation, much more services to a much greater extent than it was when we started off 2 decades ago. There is also a growing need for new types of research infrastructures and new types of research infrastructure services, not focusing on one specific scientific domain, but actually linked with specific challenges like climate change and environmental sustainability and many others that require to cut across the scientific disciplines, to bring together the services and the research infrastructures from many different areas, focused on common goal and common objectives that is transversal. Research infrastructures also, as research and innovation policy more in general, are increasingly expected to produce socioeconomic impact. Socioeconomic impact that goes beyond typical scientific knowledge or creating typical scientific knowledge, and goes beyond just producing excellent science, which is of primary importance for sure, and no one should doubt that. But we also we are under growing pressure to demonstrate how the very large investments that we are making are actually translated into the lives of our citizens. Of course, in a very simplified logic. And that requires increased coordination in research services provision very often. And this requires to be much more proactive in the way that we think about the impact of what we are doing. Now, the broad areas for policy action that we see in the coming years, and this is just certainly not a comprehensive list, it's certainly not a full list, and it's more a kind of a brainstorming of the areas where we see that further work needed and where we from the side of the Commission would like to help research infrastructures develop. So first of all, we need to foster the right balance between exploitation and further development of existing research infrastructures and identifying new investment priorities. We cannot fix on new priorities without taking into account what's existing already and how we can possibly improve what we already have. So we need to more strategically address the existing capacity gaps. We need to strengthen long-term sustainability of existing world-class RIs in Europe. And I'm focusing here on Europe, but I think that the long-term sustainability issue is a challenge for research infrastructures globally. And we would like to build on the developed long-term sustainability framework that we need within the Commission and in collaboration with ESFRI, and also the recent report of an expert group that we have set up 2 years ago to look into the challenges of long-term sustainability and the instrument with which we can help. We also need to work on consolidating the European research infrastructure landscape. As I mentioned, there are already many facilities at pan-European level, and we need to foster their collaboration and synergies between them within disciplines and across disciplines. And here again, I think that this conference, when you look at your common experiences in different areas from different research infrastructures on this particular field of logistics, I think it's a tremendous demonstration of how this collaboration is already happening. We also see the need to better utilize the political potential of European RIs to have more significant influence on setting the science agendas at European level and at member state level. It's not just the role of facilitating excellent science, but it's the role of setting the tone for what we need to do and what we can do in science and innovation in the future. And for that, we need a strengthened partnership between all the actors that are around. So the Commission, the member states, the associated countries, the scientific community, also a broad range of research and innovation stakeholders. I'm getting close to the end. Second set of broad areas for policy action that I see in the coming years in the framework of the new European research area is fostering the impact of RIs, something I mentioned already earlier, because of the needs that we see to demonstrate that to the decision makers. And I think that this is a very important point, especially in the context of foreseen budgetary shortages that are a very likely outcome of the current crisis that we are having. We need to make sure that we keep on investing in science, because science determines basically the quality of our future. So we need to foster the impact in the broader economic and social context, demonstrate and help research infrastructures to also facilitate addressing key societal challenges and strengthening the capacity that we have to respond to emergencies with research infrastructures. And here again, I think that the COVID-19 is a very good example of how we managed to do this and how research infrastructures mobilized to really provide the kick in science to deliver our response to the pandemic. But there are many other areas in which this is equally important in the longer run, like climate change or energy and many others. With that, we also strengthening our capacity in research infrastructures. We will also reinforce our strategic autonomy. to react to these emergencies and to develop our own, be responsible for our own future and for addressing what comes our way. We also need to ensure an even broader access to research infrastructure in Europe. We have done a lot, as I mentioned earlier, but there are still issues to be addressed, and we would like to explore novel and more effective ways of funding access to the facilities that we have established. We also see significant potential to further use research infrastructures by industry, by companies. We would like to facilitate that, as well as support the spin-offs from RI technology. Some of the technologies that are developed for research infrastructures, and that I'm sure you know very well, have actually great potential of being used in other areas, and we should exploit the potential to a greater extent. And finally, we have built up really substantial capacity in Europe in the field of research infrastructure and infrastructures, and we keep on investing in that. We would like to strengthen the global outreach and the global collaboration of our facilities. So, coming to the end, just very briefly on the implementation modalities, we want to work with all kinds of actors and with all possibilities that we have to foster these policy development. So first of all, we are looking at the ERA policy agenda, as I mentioned earlier. So transforming the priority areas that we are going to include in the pact that are very shortly sketched out actually into very concrete actions that would allow us to achieve a number of concrete outcomes. We of course have an important tool, which is Horizon Europe, and with its implementation, we would like to provide funding opportunities in the research infrastructure program, but also in other programs that connecting research infrastructures with missions, partnerships, fostering collaboration with the European Innovation Council, and exploiting opportunities that the European Innovation Council can actually offer to research infrastructures. So we would like to work with Horizon Europe as a tool to help research infrastructures deliver better. Currently, we have ESRI, which has proven to be a very, very effective platform for dialogue and policy development, and we would like to continue working in that context. In this unit setup between the Commission, national government, and the scientific community, hopefully also engaging more broadly with stakeholders through an enhanced dialogue and collaboration with research infrastructures and the broader partners that we have in the research and innovation system. And also, again, going to the international context, we would like to strengthen our engagement with our international partners. One forum that we have for that is the group of senior officials, but there are also other fora that are opportunities for bilateral cooperation with different regions of the world and with different specific countries. So we would like to work on that as well to promote European research infrastructure more globally. So probably I took too much time, more than I was given, but thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you really great discussions during the conference.
Thank you very much, Dominic. There's a lot on your to-do list, I mean, that you have on the agenda, and we're really looking forward how we can basically contribute to shaping some of those topics together with you as one of your key stakeholders. With that, I think we start with session number 1. Jürgen, what's going to happen there?
So session number 1 is like setting the scene, and I'm anxious to see what we have to learn from science when it comes to research in logistics, but also the experience from companies and other RIs around the globe to see what challenges they have and how they cope with it, and to take us through their, let's say, agenda of today.
And with that, we hand over now to Jan Rušák, who is moderating session number 1. Jan, over to you.
Good morning, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. As said, my name is Jan Rušák, and I am the current chair of ESFRI. And it is my great pleasure and privilege to chair this first session where 4 distinct speakers will introduce the various aspects of the topic. In the panel, we shall be discussing the latest trends within the field of supply chain management and logistics, and the experts in the panel will share with us their hands-on experience and bring some examples. We shall be discussing what we can learn in the research infrastructure area from industry and what other perspectives can be brought in. We can also discuss how research infrastructures can benefit from working together, creating common standards and harmonize the way of working. And I hope very much that the panelists we have on the panel and who represent a huge diversity of experiences will enable a very, very vivid and interesting discussion. So we will start the panel with short presentations of each of the panelists, and then we will continue with a question and answer section where you are invited to actively participate through the Q&A option of the Zoom application. So let me now, without any ado, introduce Wolfgang Stölzle, the Managing Director of the Institute of Supply Chain Management of the University of St. Gallen, who will address us with the latest trends in logistic research. So Wolfgang, please go ahead. Wolfgang, you are muted.
So now I'm here.
Perfect.
Hope to see you well. Thanks, Jan, for the polite introduction. So good morning, everybody. You're a specialist in the field of research infrastructure. I'm coming from research, from a research institution, but I'm not a specialist in research infrastructure. So please take this in the background. Latest trends in logistics research means that now we share. I have divided my short presentation in 3 chapters. For the introduction, a few words also to the Institute in St. Gallen, but the main message is that from our point of view, logistics is embedded in supply chain management. And that's also the reason why we renamed or relabeled our institute. It's was formerly called Chair of Logistics Management, and since 2018 our current name is Institute of Supply Chain Management. So logistics is embedded. That's the message. Afterwards, I will show you some selected trends coming out of our research, especially our Swiss logistics market study. And at the end, I will finalize with some very few insights into transfer potentials coming out of logistics research, perhaps also suitable for research infrastructures. So let's start with a short view into history. Logistics comes from the 60, 70 years with main focus on transport, handling, and warehousing or inventory management. That was these were the roots of our discipline. The first evolution phase in the 80s opened the field to all the coordination challenges, coordination in between a company with distribution, with sales, with production, with procurement and purchasing, with finance, and so on and so on. And from that point, we developed the discipline further on into a broader view and more or less network view, and we included also the suppliers, the sub-suppliers, the service providers, the customers of the customers, the consumers, and so on in our perspective, with the result that nowadays we use the term supply chain management, and logistics is a very important enabler concerning the performance of supply chain management. On the right-hand side, you see some numbers coming out from the automotive industry. For example, 10,000 parts are made in a car. The share of value creation by suppliers is 75% or more, up to nearly 100%. And one original equipment manufacturer like Volkswagen or BMW or Daimler or so on, they have more than 14,000 suppliers. So that means we need high-performing logistics solutions, but we need also high-performing supply chains. And I think that's for us, that's very important to see the modern role of logistics. So we say embedded in supply chain management. Our institute in St. Gallen, it's the eastern part of Switzerland. It's German-speaking part of Switzerland. Was founded in 2003. We have 2 directors, and more or less 15 employees, up to 10 doctoral students. So we are the one and only at the University of St. Gallen working in supply chain management. It's a very challenging field, not only in Switzerland, but also globally, because research nowadays is widespread over the world. We have competence centers. We work very intensively together with companies, with official institutions, and so on. And here you see some of our main research topics, and they also reflect more or less the current trends, the latest trends in our logistics research, because it's not possible to serve all current fields from the point of one institute. So let's change, let's move to the selected trends in logistics research. We can identify 2 megatrends, so-called megatrends, because they have a cross-sectional character and they determine the development of our discipline in the field of logistics, the core of supply chain management, as well as the broader field of supply chain management, digitalization and sustainability. In case of sustainability, during the last year, the main focus is on carbon emissions and reduction potentials of carbon emissions. I mean, the Green Deal and carbon neutrality are here the main points, but we have also topics in the social dimension of sustainability, for example, concerning the truck drivers and the working conditions of these truck drivers. Digitalization is not only a technological megatrend, it's also a social megatrend in our society, we think. And there are a lot of topics which have both sides. So for example, sharing economy, sharing logistics resources needs technological solutions, so-called logistics digital platforms, but also have the motivation and to use these platforms. We need other sites using resources in our economy. You know, all of you know the the buzzwords here, robotics, connected vehicles, and so on. There are a lot of technological driven trends, and the consequences of all these trends are modification concerning shipment sizes and frequencies, modifications concerning value structures, logistics processes, logistics resources, inventories, inbound, outbound, and intra-logistics concepts, as well as site logistics and urban logistics. So these are the elements of different logistics concepts in different industries: automotive industry, electronics industry, parcel, and so on. And I think also possible elements of specific logistics solutions in research infrastructures. So there you can take a look on these components and have to answer on the question how to modify those elements when you are confronted with the new trends in the field of logistics. We have a very dynamic development concerning technologies, concerning trends, concerning market structures, and so on. And that's the reason why we produce every year a new piece of research that's called Swiss Logistics Market Study. And it's our partner is the GS1 organization, GS1 Switzerland in this case. And we do research in so-called trend radar. This concerns latest trends in logistics, hype cycles, current in-depth topics of logistics, and so on. And we also examine the main drivers of these developments, like said it, digitalization and sustainability, and others more. So that's our instrument to have a current to get a current picture of the market, and we have also some companies, some institutions coming out from the Swiss logistics market, which support our piece of research in this sector. So in this slide, it's perhaps a little bit complicated. You see the a categorization of diverse technological, economic, and social trends challenge future logistics. So the cycle form difference between weak impact and strong impact. Strong impact means a big cycle, weak impact a small cycle. We defer the relevance of the speed, so slow speed and top speed here, and the color shows the category of trend. So strong green, social trends, weak green, technological trends, and in the middle, economic trends. You see a lot of trends with big influence or big relevance. So demographic change is a social trend, or a shift in value creation, also a social trend. We have economic trends like circular economy coming up to also the field of logistics and supply chain management. We have a lot of trends coming from the technological sector, like, for example, augmented and virtual reality, additive manufacturing, artificial intelligence. You all know these buzzwords, I think, Internet of Things, and so on. And they belong to the high-speed trends. with big relevance, smaller relevance, new types of transport included, and so on. So our challenge is to have a lot of different trends with different relevance and with different speed. And that's a big field to position research. To show you also only some examples, some specific examples. We work with a model of Gartner Hype Cycle, and this illuminates the diversity of the trend maturity. So in this slide, you see the different trends in different phases of the Gartner Hype Cycle. So initial phase, peak of expectations, here the valley of tears, and here the establishment phase. And some very hot discussed topics are, for example, next-gen computing, autonomous driving. Here in the valley of tears are, from our point of view, more or less big data analytics and additive manufacturing, digital twins. And in the establishing phase, we position cloud computing, digital platforms, Internet of Things. Now, one level deeper, only belonging to digital platforms, we deep dive, and you see there are different categories of platforms. Here, platforms for identification in blue-colored, green-colored, platforms for integration, platforms for connecting, and so on and so on. These are the color, and the different categories belong to different phases in the Gartner Hype Cycle. Here you see the blue ones, platforms of identifications, very they are on the peak of expectations, as well as some of them are in the establishing phase, the valley of tears, the platform for integration, and also in the establishing phase, and so on. That means that you have to defer the category or the trend of digital platforms in different types of platforms and analyze them concerning the life cycle phase here in the Gartner Hype Cycle. This has something to this had a lot to do with different expectations, and therefore we developed a best case and a worst case scenario concerning the diffusion of these technologies. So you see here the best case scenario is the green curve. That means that we are here on the strong increasing phase. We are at the beginning of the strong increasing of such platforms. That's the best case, and the worst case scenario would mean that there's a slow increasing phase, and then the explosion will come at 24, 25 this decade, and will end at 2040, for example. So, and that could be important for the providers of such platforms, because the diffusion is important for the market share, for the market relevance, and also for the turnovers and the profits of these providers. So that means you have to deep dive into each trend, but it's also important from our point of view to keep the eyes on the holistic market. And that means that we also examine every year the development of the whole Swiss logistics market with its main drivers, and we try to compare it with other market studies, and that's one of our most important challenges. There are several performance studies concerning also other countries, but real market studies concerning the whole, for example, German or Swedish or Dutch logistics market. They are very rare. We also know one study concerning the German market. It's called the Top 100 study. They come up every 2 or 3 years with a new version. Concerning performance studies, there's the logistics performance index of the World Bank. I think all of you know this application. So have a little look into the development of the Swiss logistics market, and here you see the development of more or less 15 years now. Concerning the actual year, we have a forecast, and concerning 2020, we have an estimation. And you see here the impact of the COVID crisis. This is the amount of value of the market, nearly 39 billions of Swiss francs. It was a decline here, the hugest decline since the last 15 years. In between the last 15 years, and we hope that the market will grow again a little bit from 39 to perhaps 40, 44, 45 billion Swiss francs in this year, but we don't know. It's only a forecast. So that's important for the actors, for all the companies which are engaged in our market, to have an idea about the development of the holistic market as well as its segments. My last charts transfer, my last slide, transfer potentials of logistics research for research infrastructures. I'm not sure, but those are some suggestions. Logistics is a highly dynamic industry, and we have in several branches, in several industries, a diverse set of standardized concepts, processes, and tools kits, e.g. for the automotive industry, the electronics industry, the food industry, and so on. And we also use diverse solutions which have to be customized, like, for example, for site logistics, urban logistics, and other fields. So, and perhaps these are some impulses also for research infrastructures to use these standardized concepts and to try to adapt them with under the light of the latest trends in research, to adapt them on the specific requirements of research infrastructures. And that would mean that you will get perhaps a better feeling on the maturity of your logistics concepts in your specific field. So now I'm at the end. Perhaps there will be some opportunities to discuss together. Otherwise, you here still get my contacts, and I would enjoy to have direct contact with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Indeed, an excellent introduction to the topic of logistics, its value, the current concepts, the dynamics, and also for some insight into the theoretical foundation of the related processes. Very relevant also to research infrastructures, and I guess there will be several questions to you in the question and answers session in the end. Colleagues, we are a little bit late in time, so without a long introduction, I'm inviting the next speaker to this panel, who is coming from UNICEF, from the supply division in Copenhagen, Jean-Cédric Meus. We are looking forward to your introductory talk.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Jan, for the introduction. My name is Jean-Cédric Meus, and I am the Global Chief of Transport for UNICEF. I'm not in the research, UNICEF is not in the research area, but as Kevin introduced this sessions, and thank you for inviting us, it's basically to share how UNICEF also experienced the same challenges. Because we are procuring a lot of supplies for different countries, for more than 150 countries, and we are procuring these supplies all over the world. So our challenges, and certainly over the last 2 years with the COVID pandemic and how this has affected both the suppliers and the shipping industry, what I'm going to try to explain is how we have tried to control our markets, how we have tried to control the upstream and the downstream market with kind of a network of supply and logistics all over the world. So to start briefly, and I have understood, Jan, that I will have to speed up a little bit to catch up on the time, but to start a little bit on what UNICEF does. It's basically, we are present in the world to try to make a difference on the condition of children, both in health, nutrition, wash, education, child protection, HIV, and social inclusion. We are a United Nations organization, and we exist since 1946. Sorry. So what does that represent? Over the last year, 2020 is unprecedented. We have procured more than $4.4 billion of supplies and goods, and this is basically what we will see now is where do we have this group of activity? It's essentially in pharmaceutical vaccines, in health products, and this being procured a little bit all over the world. We also procure a lot of services, and this is the shipping industry and the warehouse and the transport in general. We also can see the high nutrition commodities for therapeutic food that we ship all over the world. So this gives a little bit a range of activities. Where we buy this from, and these are the figures from 2019, but you can see the major supplies are in India, in Asia, then of course in the States and in Europe. But we also try to, as much as possible, to buy locally. And this comes to our opportunity of market shaping that I will come to a little bit later. But due to, as Kevin said, the constraints that we are facing in importation, in set packing, in custom clearance, we also try, one of the objectives is to try to support the industry to produce as close as possible to the beneficiaries. And that's why we see some countries arising here in Africa or in the Middle East, where we have the larger population of beneficiaries also. Where we send it, that's maybe a follow-up of where we buy it, but we can see one of the major customers are based in sub-Saharan Africa and then Asia. This is where we have the largest footprints. This is where we have the largest number of countries and largest number of supply chain managers. This is also where the needs of health and immunization are also the largest. Talking about our supply community, we are over 1,100 supply colleagues. We have supply colleagues in more than 107 countries. We have a variety. We have some variety of staff. We're trying to have also an equal representation of women and men in our supply community, and also looking at the diversity. For the logistics, being present in more than 150 countries, we have a decentralized logistics. We manage more than 6 global hubs, 2 in Asia, 1 in the Middle East. Our largest hub is in Copenhagen, where we have also our headquarters for supply logistics. This is one of the largest humanitarian depots in the world. And then we have more than 190 warehouses scattered a little bit all over the world, with, of course, a predominance in Africa. Over the years, due to the context, our supply function has changed. First, we were really looking at the direct delivery of our commodities and the procurement services. Procurement services is due to our experience of large procurement of pharmaceutical and other commodities. We've been also a partner of choice for some of the governments and partners around the world to be a supplier. So these were basically in 2005 the major activities. Over the years, we have diversified. We looked at capacity building, innovations, to now looking also at the financing opportunities to support government to be self-procuring. It's really the objective of UNICEF at a certain moment that the governments are procuring themselves, are managing the whole supply chain by themselves. So it's a lot of capacity development, a lot of financial supply development. And of course, innovation is always there, and then market optimization, as I will come to now. So product and innovation, to make sure that we can provide at any point of time, we needed to make sure that we have an upstream control of our market. We're organizing regular convention with the industries for nutrition, for pharmaceutical, for water and sanitation, for education. We're trying to have a better understanding of where to find the different suppliers, not putting, as we could say, all our eggs in the same basket, because we have seen during this challenging last 2 years that if we all depending of one region or one country, that this country for X, Y, and Z reason blocks the export, we will then have challenges to serve the needs of the different countries. So we're trying to diversify our market opportunities, our geographical spread of vendors, but also to, as I said earlier, to promote as much as possible local production of different essential commodities that we use in the different contexts. We're also trying to have a fairness and transparency in our procurement approach, and to try to have as long as possible long-term agreements. We publish all this information. It's open on prices, on where we buy and where we send all the supplies. So we have quite an ethical management of our procurement strategy. Then how we are trying then to look at our partners in the field. UNICEF, and you can see this on the different presentation, we use the rainbow. That's what we call with the different colors. These are different activities that we have, from the need identification to the monitoring of our activities with the distribution to the beneficiary. What we have tried over the years is to analyze the capacity of our partners, not only the capacity of our partners, but also our capacity to be the partner of choice of the Minister of Health, Minister of Education, and all the other partners that we have in the countries where we are represented. We need to make sure that we have a control of our supply chain, and then being able to work with these partners to assess their capacity and to strengthen where they need. Therefore, we have a flexible capacity either to do operation and to distribute up to the final point, either to according to the context, and even within a country, we can, according to the commodity, either distribute or hand over the supply at the central level or at a decentralized level up to the final point of the health system, the health post, or even the school and other activities or partners we are working with. So this gives really a variety of different opportunities. But to do this, so we look at the maturity assessment. So still thinking about the rainbow, we look at together with the partners, and this is often led by the partners to have that self-awareness where activities needs to be reinforced, what needs to be reinforced in the supply chain. This goes from the custom clearance, transport, warehousing, capacity of the human resources, the financing activities, all the policies, the regulatory framework. So then we have this scorecard that we assess with them, and then we identify where will be our focus during the journey of this partnership with the different Ministry of Health or different ministries or other partners we are working with. So it's really essential that there is a collaborative approach on this, and that is not led by externals, but empowered by the national partners that we are supporting. It is an exercise that we also do for ourselves, for our different countries where we are working. Now, downstream and also upstream on the transport, UNICEF is the global leader of one of the largest contracts for transport in the world. we are looking at, we do a contract for a 5-year contract with the industry, and we identify a numerous five global freight forwarders to be able to pick supplies from everywhere in the world and to send them to everywhere in the world. This partnership, this long-term agreement, is then shared with different UN organizations and made available for them for also supporting their respective operations. This is then divided in different zone of origins and zone of destination. So every freight forwarder has a destination or an origin being assigned to them according to the mode of transport, either by air, either by sea. We'll not go in details, but you can see here how this is spread and all the names of the different partners. And this is not written in stone. When we're facing emergencies like we are facing at the moment in Nepal, in India, or recently in Palestine, we then look at the comfort or the footprint of our different partners. And as this contract is not exclusive, we can then tweak the system to assign a specific freight forwarder for a specific region according to a different context. But what we're trying to do is also harmonize as much as possible to have one region. And you can see the different regions. UNICEF has 7 different regions. And every region is then assigned by a freight forwarder, and some of them might have 2 or 3 zones according to the capacity. So we are trying with this global freight forwarder to also make available this support, this service, 3PL service, to all the different countries. So we are trying to not only optimize the upstream, but also the downstream, allowing countries and regional office to benefit from this agreement and also from other partnerships that are available for the logistics service providers to help them on custom management, on local transport, on warehousing, but also to support other partners as Minister of Health and other governments to pick from this global freight forwarders agreements. So it's really trying to improve constantly in the way we're working and to reach the beneficiaries in the shortest time as possible. This all led to identify over the last 2 years, the world has suffered from the COVID-19 pandemic. And due to the setup and due to the large footprint of UNICEF, we have been identified as the partner of choice for delivering protection in 2020, essentially protection commodities, and then to work with the industry on the COVID-19 vaccine supply chain. We had, therefore, an alliance that was created called COVAX, and UNICEF has been identified to be the procurement and shipping agency to deliver more than 2 billion doses of vaccines in more than 80 countries in the world. It was possible to do this, and we have a look at the achievement because of, as I explained a little bit earlier, all the setup that we have established and that we have trained and that we have worked with over the last decades, working with the pharmaceutical companies, so that helped us to ascertain contracts with the pharmaceutical companies to procure a large number of COVID-19 vaccines, but also thanks to our footprint and our collaborative approach with the 3PL service providers to be able to reach any countries in the world at any point of time. Up to now, we have not suffered too much from the industry disturbance because, as you know, the shipping industry has been seriously affected, but we have created new partnerships. We have met with the industry. Normally, we're only working with the service providers, like the freight forwarders, but we have also met with the WEF. We have met with different carriers, and we have increased our number of partnerships with airlines, with sea freight carriers, and with the World Economic Forum to make sure that we would not have any interruption in our supply chain. And this is by changing with the different stakeholders and making sure that we have a flexible approach in our modeling of activities and making sure that we can reach any beneficiary at any point of time. So this is the number of partners. Every day change, because we have now also partnership with DHL. We have also partnerships with other airlines to make sure that at any point of time we can deliver the vaccines that we have procured to anywhere in the world. This is, I think this is the information from 2 days ago. So up to now, we have delivered more than 43 million doses of vaccines in more than 89 countries. We would like to do better, but as you know, that at the moment, India has closed the export for COVID-19 vaccine. So we together with WHO, we identify new vaccines producer, and we will soon gear up again. We are continuing to ship vaccines on a daily basis, but the pace has a little bit slowed down due to the lack of increased availability of COVID-19. But that's also why with WHO, we have identified alternative suppliers, and no need to name them because you see this on a daily basis in the news. So we will soon increase again our deliveries to all the different countries. Our objective is to secure more than 20% of the needs of the population in 52 countries plus self-financing, so to reach to 89 countries. But also we are now working with different countries in the world that have over-procured and that are going to a solidarity fund, and that will make these vaccines available for the rest of the world. We then look at an ethical allocation and making sure that instead of sending as much as possible to one country, we spread the available vaccines to all over the different countries. It's sometimes easy because you ship like more than 10 or 15 pallets in one plane. It's sometimes more complicated when you need to reach a country like Cape Verde or Sao Tome and Principe, where it's only a small box that is representing 10% or 5% of the population. So all this to say that over the years, we have tried to control our supply chain to be able to face issues or emergencies like we are facing now with COVID-19, and making sure that we don't leave any child or any person behind, and that we have always the way to adapt our supply chain to the needs that arise in the horizon. So this was my last slide. Thank you for this opportunity to share our experience, and over to you, Jan, for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Jean-Cédric, indeed, for sharing your experience with the logistics at a truly global scale. Impressive work you're doing, both in terms of volume and diversity. Also here, we will take the questions by using the Q&A Zoom instrument, and we will discuss them in the end of the panel. Now, colleagues, it's my great privilege to invite Xavier Barcons, the Director General of the European Southern Observatory, to the stage. Xavier will present the challenges experienced while building a big science facility. Xavier, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jan. Thanks to all of you. I hope you can hear me.
Could
and
you switch to the presentation mode because you have the presenter's mode.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Sorry. Need to do a quick change. Sorry about this. Okay. Start again. How's that now?
Thanks a lot. That's perfect.
Good, thank you. So yes, I'm going to entertain you during the next 10 to 15 minutes with a real-world example on building and operating big science facilities precisely in very remote places. So I'm the Director General of ESO. We are the European Southern Observatory, or European Organization for Astronomical Research in the Southern Hemisphere. We have been building and operating large science infrastructures for almost 60 years. So we predate even the European Union, of course, ESFRI, the ERICS, and so on. We are an intergovernmental organization founded relatively soon after CERN. And this is what we do, build and operate big astronomical telescopes on the ground. together with engaging with the community and facilitating exchange of information and cooperation. Today, we have 16 member states, all in Europe, plus a strategic partner, that's Australia, and indeed a long-standing partnership with Chile, since all of our observatories sit in the Atacama Desert in the north part of Chile. We have also going global in one of our projects. This is called ALMA, the Atacama Large Millimeter Array, where we have partnered with other organizations in North America and East Asia. Our headquarters are in Garching. You get the feeling of our size. There's about 750 people working at ESO. Our budget this year, it's close to 350 million. We are operating some of the most productive ground-based telescopes. The science output of the organization leads to above 1,000 refereed papers per year. And at the moment, we're engaged in the building of the largest and most powerful ground-based optical and infrared telescope, which is called the ELT, the Extremely Large Telescope. This is in a glimpse where we are. As I said, our headquarters are in Bavaria, in Germany, near Munich. We have an office in Santiago in Chile as well. And then we operate our telescopes in a number of sites in La Silla, near La Serena, in Paranal, and in Chajnantor at 5,000 meters altitude. I'll give a brief description of this because that is very good food for thought about the logistic challenges. So La Silla, this is the very first observatory that we built. It went past its 52nd year anniversary this year, actually. We still operate there a couple of facility telescopes, 3.5 meters. Those are considered middle to small size today, plus a number of hosted telescope facilities. Those are relatively small projects, often operated remotely by institutes in our member states, and to which we provide all the technical support by our talented staff on the site. There's a number of domes that you can see in the mountain. Some of them have already been decommissioned, but it's still a very productive place it delivers a lot of science every year. Now, Paranal, this is the most powerful optical observatory in the world. It sits a bit south of Antofagasta in Chile at an altitude of about 2,650 meters. It has a number of telescopes. There's one thing that we call the VLT, the Very Large Telescope, which is the set of 4 large units in there. Each one of these domes contains a telescope with a primary mirror of more than 8 meters across. There's also smaller telescopes that can be moved to do interferometry in the near infrared. This is a rather unique facility in the world of astronomy. And we also have a couple of survey telescopes. We can offer a lot of instruments in the foci of these telescopes. And by combining them either coherently or incoherently, we also offer a few more facility instruments in there. The whole thing, the whole suite is operated as a single entity. We have a single control room. We have a single infrastructure in there. And that's what makes this observatory very efficient. Here's a few pictures of what I'm talking about the technology and the infrastructure that we have really in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a desert. And at the bottom right, you can see some of our facilities, the warehouses, the accommodation for the staff and for the visiting scientists, everything that we had to build, of course, in there. I will come back to the challenges of operating, not just building these places. ALMA, I already mentioned it. It's a partnership, a really global partnership. It's in operation since 2011. This is a radio astronomical facility operating in submillimeter, in the submillimeter regime. That means that we have to go very high to not have any water vapor on top of us to really be able to do observations of the sky. These antennas are placed at 5,000 meters of altitude. This is a very challenging environment, as you can imagine. There's 66 of them. They sit on a plateau called Chajnantor. This is about 16 kilometers across. And on that plateau as well, there's this technical building which contains the brain of the observatory, this gigantic correlator. This is a very powerful custom-made supercomputer, and of course all the backend with the clock and all the technology that is needed in there. For the operation of this facility, there's normally no one up there, or just 1 or 2 people. We have an operation support facility down at 3,000 meters altitude, where we have lots of technical support. The control rooms, we have to produce our own power in there. You can see the turbines on the top left here, together with the power conditioning system. Of course, we also need to move these antennas from time to time. We have to have these transporters, and of course our accommodation services for the staff have also had to be built in the past in there. As I mentioned, this is our ongoing construction challenge. This is called the ELT, Extremely Large Telescope. We started to build it in 2015. Our budget is about 1.3 billion plus all the support, all the overheads from the organization, and some of the instruments that are being built by consortia of institutions in the member states. This telescope is being erected in the top of a mountain, Cerro Armazones. This is very close to Paranal. It's about just over 3,000 meters of altitude. And when it's built, it will be operated as part of the Paranal Observatory, therefore simplifying all the logistics aspects. Here's some pictures on where we stand with the on-site work. Unfortunately, it had to be shut down for some months due to the pandemic restrictions. We have a support building in Paranal for this telescope, and a number of items that are being manufactured in Europe before they are sent to Chile. So here's a short summary of how we see our challenges in terms of logistics, mostly focusing on construction of these big machines in the middle of nowhere. First of all, most of the components, as you can imagine, are manufactured in companies in Europe and elsewhere, but very often in European industry. We have to take them to Chile. First of all, we use either sea or air freight, very often sea freight because of the volume and the mass, and also because it's more carbon friendly, which is something that we look at very carefully these days. Then we have to import this goods in Chile. This is quite a challenge. We benefit there from being an intergovernmental organization. Remember that Chile is not a member state, although we have an agreement regarding privileges and immunities, which is incredibly helpful to facilitate our imports, custom clearance, and we of course need the help from a customs broker there. That's not an easy process, but we have been exercising it for more than 50 years, almost 60 now. Then once we get the pieces in the country, our pieces are generally rather extreme. What you can see in the picture on the right is half of the dish of an antenna. Remember, there's 66 of them, and we need to transport them by road, long roads through the desert to the observatories, special dimensions. We need to warn the police. That's all complicated, but we managed to do it, and I think we know how to do it now. If I have to give some tips on what we have learned during this process, I have organized this in these 4 areas. One is about programmatics. That is no news with respect to any research infrastructure, I would say. We have to make sure that all stakeholders are supportive. This is not an easy task. We don't build a big thing in the middle of the desert if we don't have the support from everyone. That would be a big mistake. We need to support the multi-annual funding. Projects get delayed, and we cannot afford that one of our partners does not have the funding available when it is needed. And anything that requires infrastructure construction needs to include a reasonable contingency fund, because in particular in Chile, I can tell you, construction civil work prices escalate very quickly. One other aspect we have learned is the local engagement. This is super critical. This is what one of my colleagues has tagged as social permission to operate. You need to make sure that the local society understands that this is a win-win and that they can see at local, regional and national level that there are opportunities generated by the building and operation of this infrastructure. Securing the supply chain is not an easy task, and I would argue that the most critical item is the human capital that you need on the site. If it's not available in the skill sets that you need, what we are trying to do now is to invest on it, and that's been shown to be very productive. In particular, in the case of Chile, where the country has really developed itself a lot during the last 50 years, and this, which actually was a terrible challenge in the early days, it's no longer the case. We have very skilled and very well-trained people in the country. Now, the third heading that I wanted to underline is about the basic infrastructure. That's super important where you are in the middle of the desert. As you can imagine, where we build our observatories, there's no power, there's no water, there's no data connection, there's even no roads at the beginning. So we had to build or to engage or to partner to have all these things built in. I'm very happy, for example, that the Paranal Observatory has been now powered for more than 3 years through a connection to the national grid, which actually has, in the case of Chile, one of the greenest coefficients of the entire world. And in the last weeks, I have actually signed an agreement with the company providing the power to build a solar power plant in our territory that will provide full green energy for our observatory. Unfortunately, water is a very scarce good in there. We need to truck it, and that's a challenge in terms of infrastructure, but also in terms of environmental respect. Data transmission, that was also a big challenge. And we had to build the connections together with big projects, one of them funded by the European Commission, actually, in Chile. So all this is a challenge, and it comes as an additional problem when you build an infrastructure in the middle of the desert. Of course, we have to build in the middle of the desert because of the conditions, of the weather conditions for our operation. So looking at the future, what we're looking at in terms of operations is to reduce as much as possible the on-site human presence. It is very expensive and it's environmentally unfriendly. Where we can, we use commercial support services and local if they are available. That reduces the risk and it further engages locally, which is one of our motivations. And we're now analyzing way to move to the use of Industry 4.0 tools for the operation, in particular the maintenance and all the technical support of our facilities. So I think this is all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Xavier. Indeed, thank you for keeping the time and bringing us again a bit closer to the original schedule. Thank you also for all the contribution and insight. It is always impressive to see how you work and how the work you're doing in Chile is progressing. And it's also impressive to imagine the challenges you are facing in setting up the research infrastructure in such a remote area like the Atacama Desert, and particularly from the logistics perspective, it is very impressive. I guess you will have many questions in the end.
Happy to answer them. Thanks.
The last speaker in this panel is Helmut Schober, the director of the Laue-Langevin Institute and the current Air Forum chair. Helmut will, in some sense, close the circle by reflecting on how scientists expect, or what the scientists' expectations are on the logistics perspective.
Thank you very much, Jan. You can see my presentation well?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, so thank you very much. I will try also to be fast. Xavier has already introduced in some sense Aeroforum. Just a couple of words, because I'm speaking here mainly in my function as chair of Aeroforum. Aeroforum are 8 of the major intergovernmental European research organizations. And so we are all facing the challenges that Xavier has nicely explained. And I will focus a little bit more on the smaller logistics that is related to the user operation. And maybe as there is in the audience people that don't know how we really function in detail, I would like to give a short introduction into that, trying to direct them to the logistic challenges. So most of all us provide infrastructures for what we call users, but you can also call them simply clients. So we offer a service, and there's clients out there that are keen to use that service. And so we are embedded into ecosystems, complex ecosystems, where our clients come from industry, from academia. And as you can see here with the example of the ILL, very diverse. For example, our client base is about 12,000 users strong. Every year, 1,500 of them come to the ILL, to Grenoble, where we have our neutron source, and they use one of our 40 instruments in areas completely diverse, from really fundamental physics to studying weld or studying pharmaceutical products. And so what is important to understand, and for me it's the knowledge production chain and not the supply chain that I use here, is that in this many elements have to come together, right? So that from a bright idea that somebody might have at the university, or a really important problem to solve in an industrial process, that you get to a nice publication or to the end a improvement of that industrial process. First of all, the people have to know about us. Then they have to have access in a competitive process to our facilities. Our facilities have to be top-notch. They have to be reliable. We have to react fast. We have to be agile. And last but not least, we have to have on-site the expertise that Xavier has already talked about, in particular from the scientific side, so that also the experiment is conducted in such a way that in the end, the result is at the expectations of the users. So this implies logistics. And as I said, I'm not going to talk about shipping huge equipment over the ocean, or in the case of CERN, which is a member of Aeroforum, constructing a tunnel with 100-kilometer circumference in 2 different countries. I'm talking here a little bit about the logistics related to carrying out those experiments. And so that has also been mentioned already by Kevin in the introduction. The users, they want that it's easy for them to come here. They don't want to invest a lot of energy, brains into figuring out how to write their proposals and how to get through the selection process. And for the facility, it's the same. We want the brightest ideas to come to us. And so we want to make it as easy as possible. Then when it comes to the experiment, as I said, reliability, top-notch capabilities is essential. So we have to make sure that in terms of maintenance, and maintenance means supplying replacement parts and so on, that we are also absolutely excellent. So otherwise the experiment will not take place, or it will not take place with the required quality. And last but not least, which becomes more and more important, people normally after the experiment have lots of data, but data is not yet knowledge, and it's not yet a solution to an industrial process. So we have the IT infrastructure and the logistics that goes with this that we have to take care of. And to make things even more complex, naturally a source like the ILL is not on its own. We have all our friendly competitors out here. Science is more and more multi-messenger. You won't just use one probe like the neutrons, you would use the X-rays, the electron microscopes, and so on. And the clients we have, they want that this is borderless, and that again, when switching from one of those probes to the others, this is as easy as possible, because and this is important for us because we need these other probes to be successful as well, and so we may want to make this transition the easiest possible. So I've structured now the logistic challenges with a couple of examples from ILL, but also some other IROs along this knowledge creation chain. So I will give another touch on what Xavier has already mentioned, that is critical equipment for the facility. I will then talk a little bit about the experimental setups and what is important there in terms of logistics, not only shipping the goods, but also all the administrative questions like liability, customs, VAT. And then I really come down to the sample coming to the ILL, to the people coming to the ILL, and at the end to the data. And not surprisingly, we have learned a lot over the last 2 years in the context of COVID-19, how important all these various aspects are, because some of them, we took them for granted. And so as they broke down those logistics elements, we had to quickly find solution. And it's not only the COVID, it has been outlined before, our societies want to be more environmentally sustainable. So traveling and all these questions, we are confronted with new challenges, and there's the regulations, right? Security and in general shipping, sometimes hazardous goods is getting more complex. Now, let's give an example of logistics and in the area of keeping your facility just reliable. So this, you might think, is nothing peculiar. It's a piece of welded aluminum that we have to replace in our reactor. I'm not going to go into the details. I just tell you that the fabrication of this relatively simple piece, because it's nuclear and you have lots of quality control involved, takes 2 years. The piece costs a couple of million euros. But if in the end you damage it during the shipping, or something else happens during handling, it can bring to the knees a facility like the ILL that has 2 billion euros of replacement value. So you have to really make sure that the logistics, the supply of equipments like this is done smoothly. And also there's normally no insurance. That has been also mentioned by Kevin. We are self-insured. And also normally our budgets don't foresee that we can produce pieces like that in larger quantities to mitigate the risk of damage. So you see, we have to be very careful, and we need real professionals to deal with. And it's on a smaller scale, an example of what we are faced with every day in order to keep our facilities alive and kicking. So now let's presume we have done all that, the facility is working well. Now this team from the University of Vienna that you see here wants to bring in their sophisticated equipment to the ILL to investigate dark matter and dark energy with the help of observing neutrons in the gravitational field. Again, it's not huge. But on the other hand, we have, as I have told you, 1,400 users, and all of them have little requests like that. So you have to make sure the transport is well organized, and you have to make sure customs is done right. Because also, and that's something we are learning the hard way, if you don't do it right, all of a sudden, your facility may be confronted with legal responsibility, right? For example, if you import something from outside the European Union, from Russia, you declare it for scientific use, you have to make sure it goes back. And if somebody just dumps it because they think there is no use for that equipment anymore, you might get into trouble. So lots of tiny little things, I think, where if we do that together as RIs, we can learn a lot from each other. And as Kevin has said, in the end, we have to make the best out of taxpayers' money. And therefore, if these things are streamlined, if we have standard contracts, then this is of help to everybody. So that was the equipment, but what now about the samples? So Kevin has already mentioned this, and he's not any longer with us, but I could reassure him that still students, postdocs, researchers are transporting delicate samples with them in their pocket or in their suitcase on transatlantic flights. And so here, really, COVID, we have learned a lot how important that is. One area, and this is an example from EMBL, where this handling of sample is very involved, is protein crystallography. There is a very high throughput, thousands of samples being processed, and so the logistics is well controlled. And so that allows, for example, to do experiments without the people on site. And as you see here from the example of ESRF, COVID has forced us to streamline this and extend it to basically all our activity. Both ESRF, which is next door, the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility, ILL, here both in Grenoble, we were working for the last 2 years mainly without users. And so having a good infrastructure for those samples is very important. And you have to be very careful. You have to be very rigorous because you have to track those samples really uniquely. You have to make sure that the transport is controlled. Sometimes these materials may be radioactive. Others may be, from a bio health perspective, be hazardous. But also then when it comes to the experiment, you really want to be sure that when you publish your data, the sample you had in the beam was the one that was supposed to be at the beam at that time. So this requires logistics, and this is here an example how the ESRF has reacted to this challenge over the last 2 years. And just as an example, what the damage can be if that doesn't work, we had the bad experience that a crystal that was grown for proteins from the COVID-19 virus, from the SARS-CoV-2, well, that didn't, the chain, the cooling chain did not work. And so when it was shipped over from the US to the ILL, it was damaged, and we couldn't do that experiment. You can imagine that what a loss in terms of reputation this is for an institution. So very important, the sample. But then also you have to carry out with the sample the experiment, and there again over the last 2 years we have made a big jump in remote controlling, remote managing of the experiments. Today, most of our experiments can be done virtually with assistance from our scientists here at the ILL. That has the advantage that we can spread globally over time zones, and so that gives a whole new dimension to what we can do in terms of experiments and controlling the experiments. However, and that was pointed out by our scientific council, we should not think that we can do everything remotely. To the contrary, everybody, people are really looking forward to normality. already for reasons, for example, of training the students, the postdocs with hands-on. So this is very important. So another logistics aspect that is important for us is everything that's on-site visits. And again, when you see how the travel restrictions have put a brake on that and how little prepared in some sense we were, then you get an idea about the importance. And what we also learned is how important it is to have all over Europe a coherent and clear approach, and that the users get really the expected assistance. It's very bad if you tell your users, no, this is not possible, and then they tell you, well, but it's possible at the facility next door, it's possible in a facility at the facility in Germany. So we have to make sure that also these aspects are well taken care of. And the last two slides, I'm really trying to hurry through here to make good some time, is the data aspects. Something that has been mentioned already by Dominik Sobczak is the data portal that the AMBL, another member of Aeroforum, has set up. And that was absolutely essential for the progress we have made on the scientific side, also for the vaccinations and so on with COVID-19. A platform, a portal where you can put your data, where they can be retrieved, processed from, let's say, what you learn in the hospital from treating your patients down to the nitty-gritty detail of the structure of the virus, and that you can cross-link those data, extremely important to make scientific progress nowadays. And you see here, we are talking about a huge exercise, more than 100,000 sequences of data in the portals, millions of requests to have access to the data, and this from all over the world, and very important, completely free to everybody, so that we're really working here for humanity. So Jan, I hope I stayed more or less in time. This is what I wanted to add to setting the scene this morning, and I think I hope it complements nicely the big Javier's presentations, where he was talking about the big challenges, and I was focusing in a little bit more on the small issues.
Yes, indeed. Big thank you to you, Helmut, for keeping the time, but also for addressing the importance of logistics also from the user perspective. In particular, I think it's very important that you have raised the data challenge and the synergy of different experimental settings, which in my view open a new dimension of looking for new logistical solutions badly required in this heavily interacting and integrated and interconnected research infrastructure ecosystem we are aiming for and facing to. So there are already now several questions in the chat, in the questions and answers box. I will take them as they appear. So first question to Wolfgang. You have pointed to two megatrends, to the digitalization and sustainability. How those trends impact the logistics operations? Would you like to comment on that a little bit? And maybe it's related, if you just go to the next question as well and address it, what lessons learned from the commercial world can be applied effectively by research infrastructures? What can we learn from businesses?
Yes, thanks. I'm not sure if the first question concerns me, because we at our institute we don't have any specific logistics operations. We analyze operations in the industry, so that means logistics operations concerning service providers, concerning retailers, concerning industry companies, and so on. And our core question is how how to modify these processes and how to modify logistics concepts in the face of digitalization and also in the face of especially carbon emission reducing goals. And so as I told, we have a lot of more or less standardized concepts, standardized processes, and they have to be modified if you work with a new technology, if you work with, or if you have new goals, other goals, and so on. And my insight was to look for transfer potentials concerning the logistics in research infrastructures. How are they occurred with these trends? But perhaps Helmut or another speaker can have some impulses to this idea.
Well, I think Wolfgang, just to reply, yes. Well, digitalization, from my perspective, for the moment, is something that we are certainly behind the big players, right? Because this is not our core business. I don't want to speak for the other Irish, but in our case, however, the sustainability issue is naturally high on the agenda, because if you just think that we have 1,500 people coming to ILO, 6,000 people coming to the ESRF by plane and so on, there is naturally a pressure on us to reflect, also from internally, from the people themselves, the scientists who ask themselves, well, do we need all that, right? And so in this sense, I think we have to reflect in the future of adapting our business model in such a way that we do what we did so successful in the past, the interaction between the people, the career of the scientist has to advance. This is all important. But bring in the new tools, and that you may call now digitalization in this case, like the remote access, and boil it down to the really necessary. And this pressure we will have, this pressure will increase. We had yesterday an IRO forum meeting, and it's clear all IROs currently are establishing internal processes where they look at these CO2 fingerprints within their operations and try to mitigate those. So that would be my answer. Those trends, we feel them in this sense, but we are not yet big digitalization, for example, in our purchasing departments or so. Maybe Xavier is different with his challenges, but at least in my case.
No, not very much. I think you said it all, Helmut. I mean, for us, I already mentioned, and you also underlined, sustainability is a target, and for this we need to enable as much as possible remote operation, and the digitalization of the operations for us is a linked process into this. I mean, as I mentioned before, we need to avoid as much as we can that we have to travel into the middle of the desert to operate our facilities. So those two aspects are linked, and we're really actively looking into ways of implementing them. And from what I heard, like you, Helmut, in our forum General Assembly the last 2 days, this is very high in the agenda of all of these big infrastructures at the moment.
Thank you, colleagues. Let me now come to Jean-Cédric. There is a question whether we can get access to the supply chain maturity model used by UNICEF. And I would like to extend it a little bit by asking how can we apply this model eventually on research infrastructures in order to create and maintain common standards? Maybe you could develop on that a little bit?
Yes, thank you, Jan. I think the maturity exercise is needed for all of us, depending on the context. Europe, what we're first looking at is our logistics performance indicator. And it's well known by everybody. And maybe not offending anybody on the panel or on the participants, but Germany is the outstanding logistics performing country. But where UNICEF operates, it's basically on the bottom of the list. In Africa, one of the first logistics performing country is Ivory Coast in South Africa, and they come on the 99 position or 80 position. So that really gives an idea of which context where we operate. But disregard that Germany is one of the most performing logistics country, it's always interesting to analyze how we can improve. And as the introduction was made to say, okay, we have customs issues, we have now with the discussion on digitalization and everything, it is important to understand where we work, the context. And also, my fellow colleagues from panelists also discuss about data management. So we're trying a lot to have a digitalization of our supply chain. We have one system, we have one SAP system that allows us to have all the data of all from procurement to delivery, and we're analyzing this. That allows us to identify where we're losing time, where we can improve and how to improve. And this is the same thing for our partners. So yes, the maturity exercise can be available to everybody. This is not only used by UNICEF, this is used by a lot of different partners in the humanitarian development world. It is, of course, contextually to be adapted from one a company to another organization. But it's really important. I think for us, it helps us a lot to be able to improve on-time delivery, to reduce the cost. Last year, we have spared millions of dollars by basically having a better understanding of our supply chain, reducing the timelines, and being a better support to our government. So in short, yes, it is available. I will discuss with Jürgen and your colleagues to see how this can be made available for you as an example, because it is not written in stone. It all depends from your context, but it can guide you to where we look at, what have we looked at to make sure that we have an upstream connection with the downstream beneficiaries. Over.
Thank you for this offer, and I think you have also covered the last question which came just in. So let's turn to Xavier. I mean, Xavier, you have discussed a lot which challenges you have been facing when working in Chile, but you have not so much mentioned the challenges which concern the involvement of multiple countries in your operation, in your construction, in the logistics. So is there something you would like to highlight here briefly?
Not very much. I think, honestly, that our governance model helps a lot because, I mean, and of course, our member states have learned how to work together for almost 60 years now. We're very slow when we have to start a new project. I mean, that I have to admit. It takes years to convince everyone and our member states, the communities, the scientific institutes to be hooked into it and to see that we're really heading towards a real gain for everyone. So that's a slow process, agreed. But once we're on that ground, we proceed very, very solidly, and then that's how we have learned to work together. And I see now that we are involved in other research infrastructures. Some of them are going to be handled through an ERIC, for example, or through other models. I see that this first step, which is to get everyone behind, it's not easy if you don't have the right governance model. I mean, sometimes the member states look more at what they have to gain rather than to support a common project that will benefit all. And this, it's never an easy process, but I'm very glad that the governance model that we have as an intergovernmental organization helps a lot to it. And I have to praise my council members now because they have been so much working along these lines for almost 60 years that it's really amazing. So that's all I have to say.
Jan, maybe I can compliment because from our side, we are a private company, ILL, even so we have an intergovernmental agreement. And so we spend a lot of time lately, you know, on trying to bring the political side, which is, for example, juste retour, so that into the countries you have about the flow of finance back that they provide to the facility in agreement with the European Treaty, where you have open competition and all these things. So we were surprised that, I was surprised over the last 5 years how often I needed lawyers. And I'm pretty sure that Jürgen and Kevin from ESS will be confronted with similar problems. And I have also the impression that maybe the ERIC, and that's where I had hoped that all that could be solved, is probably not the ultimate word that has been said. So I think from a European perspective, we should really work also on this, because it can be a lot of effort that we cannot invest into science, that we have to invest into these questions.
Yes, and I see Ute is urgently asking for the floor.
Yes, we are the party spoilers now, Jürgen and I, because we are running out of time, unfortunately. It was so interesting, and thank you so much for your valuable contributions. And we have recorded this session, so that means we can look at it again, which is, I mean, a big added value. And also, I think you will be happy to share your slides so that we can get back to them and basically reflect on that. Jürgen, are you happy?
I'm extremely happy and extremely grateful. I've been writing, multitasking, which is not my strong side, but still, I have a lot of notes, and I will come back to actually all of you with some follow-up questions, and also to the audience who has written other questions in the field of questions and answers. We will address them in some way onwards.
So once again, thank you very much for this first panel. And I would like the audience to stay in this link, please. So we have a short break, and then we will reconvene here at 11:15. So that gives you time for a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. And don't go out of this meeting room. We will be back in just a few minutes. Thank you very much, everyone, and stay tuned, please. Thanks very much.
Thank you.